My name is Matt Orozco from Macabre Daily, and I am really grateful to be joined by Ali Akbar Akbar Kamal, who is the writer-director of Godforsaken, which we recently reviewed on the site. For those that don't know Ali, he's directed 2 feature-length films and quite a few short films. He's held various roles in the film industry, including editing, camera operator, director, and he's also in the stunt union as well. So Ali, thanks for joining us today for the interview.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I really appreciate this.
Oh, it's our pleasure. And first off, just by saying thank you and congratulations on the release of Godforsaken. I'm not sure if you've read our review yet, but we had a good time with it. We really enjoyed it.
I did. I really appreciate what you guys wrote. I really thank you.
Oh, good. And I as I was watching it, so I had a few questions come to mind that I was really keen to ask you about the film, particularly, what was your inspiration for Godforsaken, from the script all the way to how you wanted to film it?
Well, I heard like a story as a child where somebody came back to life in their own funeral. They started acting like a toddler and they just died again. And I was kind of thought that would make a good hook, like, for a movie. Yeah. And now when it comes to other story, when it comes to the rest of the story, I'm from Afghanistan, so just my entire life, I've always been kind of like thinking about extremism and religion and how they work with each other. So I would say it's definitely inspired by that. I want to make a good movie, like fun movie, but the story is definitely inspired by my own country and what it went through, and yeah.
That's interesting. I was gonna, as I was watching it, I got the sense that there's there's religious undertones, clearly, because of the insinuation of why she's come back. But was your household very religious when you were growing up? Is that something that was really a big part of your life?
Extremely. Oh yes, not extremely. That's the wrong word. But yeah, they're very religious. My family, the religious has affected them very well over the years. We came from war, and we had to move countries a lot, so I can see the positive effects of religion on them. So yeah, my long story short, my family has been very religious, but not me.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I wrote in the beginning of the review about my own kind of journey with religion and kind of viewing different sides of it. And I always find it such a great template for horror, because the possibilities are really, pretty imaginative. And as I was watching, I tend to be, when it comes to found footage, I feel like it's really hard for me, particularly sometimes, to engage. And I found myself highly entertained with Godforsaken. So I was wondering, did you always envision this to be a found footage type film? Or did you have something different in mind from when you began thinking about it?
I had this story in my mind for like a few years, like every filmmaker does. For the longest time, it was supposed to be very different. For example, the girl that comes back and is all weird and everybody says she's God. That character was supposed to be a man, and that man was supposed to be unbelievably charming. So it had like a whole different story before. But I watched this Turkish movie, Dabi, and they did some very great camera work within found footage. And once I saw that, I was like, maybe I can take this story, change it a bit, put more horror to it rather than make it more horror rather than more drama, as I originally wanted to. And yeah. So,
wow.
Yeah,
so this started off as like more of a drama centric film. What is it that you saw in that film? And I don't know if I'll say the pronunciation. You say Gabi or Dabi? Gabi was the name of it?
Dabi. D-A-B-E, yeah.
I'm going to write it down because I'm also curious, just to expand my own horizons as far as anything that anyone says is good, I should definitely watch. But what is it that got you thinking this might play better as a horror film rather than a more dramatic piece?
I'm going to be honest with you.
Yeah.
It was a budget. I found footage is cheaper, and I don't know. I just thought I had this story for a while, and I just thought maybe if I put more horror elements, it'd be more interesting. The drama would have been fine, but I thought, what am I doing? This is perfect for horror. Why don't I why don't I make it horror? Like the main girl, Lisa, is is inspired by just The Ring and all those movies. So yeah, it's just yeah, that was my thought process. I thought a horror would be more fun than a drama.
Well, I think and along with many others, would agree that that's why the horror fans tend to be just so rabid when it comes to new content, because there's something exciting about it. And I understand with found footage that it does create an opportunity because of being lower budget. I think the numbers I saw were $40,000 budget Canadian. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So how did you, like, what are the things that did you feel like that was enough? Did you to execute against your vision? Do you feel like there was more you wanted to do? Was it almost just right? Where would you say it kind of landed as far as what you had in mind and what you were able to accomplish?
I'll say this. I was very happy with what I got. I was actually, for the first time, I was very satisfied with my work. But when it comes to like, could I have done more? Or like always, you could always have
Sure.
more budget. You could always do bigger things. Like I would have loved to like set a few things on fire in the movie. I wanted to do that. Just bring it. It just creates more chaos and fun. But you just gotta pick and choose what you can and you can't do. So yeah, I mean, I always want to do bigger and whatnot, and then I settle for what I can do.
Yeah, I've always had this conversation, and it coincidentally has been with a lot of other, filmmakers from Canada or who are making their work in Canada, is that there's kind of this a bit opportunity that exists with having budget constraints, that you have to be a little more creative about what you're doing. And I think some of the areas where I really kind of didn't feel like it was trying to change, or at least didn't feel like a low budget film, is one, the way it propels towards the ending and kind of the point at which the proverbial shit hits the fan, right? Is like, that's when it starts to feel much bigger. Except again, you're working within a smaller budget, significantly smaller than most most big studio films would be, and yet you still have the ability to create scale with things like Empty Streets. What are the things that you were doing on the production side to try and build that scale without having the budget to be able to do so?
So excuse me. So the main character Chad is from the Harrison town, and he's pretty well liked there. And he's made a few shorts there. And uh, basically, what I did to create scale was I knew I needed a bunch of extras in the background, and not just a bunch of youngsters, but I needed like old people. I needed little kids, just to like a real. So that was one thing that we tried our best. We scheduled it very specifically to make sure that all the people show up, because yeah, it's hard to like schedule a bunch of people who you're not paying and whatnot.
Yeah.
And the other one that helped me create the scale was just the locations. That church that we got, I was 100% positive we weren't going to get that, especially with the subject matter of the movie. But they were so nice, and yeah, the whole town was just nice, and they're all for it. And I just got really lucky, with a good town. That's it.
It looked like it. I mean, even the night shots, the ability to get kind of those shots where the streets are empty, but it does help to reinforce, the tone of what you're going for at that point, which is basically utter chaos, and everyone's kind of running for their lives, quite literally. Now, speaking of the performances, I think that what helps sell found footage more than anything else are the performances. You can put all the gags and scares into a found footage film, but really, if the people that you're going through this with aren't believable, then it's really hard for that forum or format to really have its full effect. Where did you find some of these actors? You mentioned Chad grew up in the town, but even Chad's mom, I think the scenes with her are absolutely like shocking. As I was watching it, I started to get kind of goosebumps, because she really delivers quite a lot of power. Is that something that you just were lucky with finding great actors to work on this, or did you direct them, or was it a little bit of both?
A little bit of both. With Nicole specifically, the mother, I got super lucky, because usually with the lower budget, it's easy to find good actors who are younger, but it's very hard to find older actors, especially if you're gonna want them for like 2 weeks and you're gonna pay them very little. So I just got really lucky with her, and that's what I told my producers too. I was like, there's got to be somebody out there who's not yet in union but who's talented enough. And yeah, we just got lucky with Herb, and the rest of the people I went to film school with back in around 2012. I went to film school with Chad, and Chad was a teacher for Nicole. No, not sorry, not Nicole. I've been camera operating all day.
Totally fine.
But Chad was a teacher of Katie, the other girl, and I also went to school with Dom. I was in film production. He was in acting. So I knew a lot of actors, and some actors we just got very lucky with. All the older actors we got lucky with, and all the younger ones are the ones I went to school with. Yeah,
that's so great. I mean, I think that is what I've learned from a lot of folks, particularly that are in the indie horror side of things, is that, you know, you really is labors of love at the beginning, and you're working with a lot of people that you're all trying to do the same thing, which is, you know, you just want to make movies. And, you know, given that you're on this path and have played so many different roles in the film industry, you know, what kind of advice do you give, or would you give to somebody who's out there thinking, hey, I want to make something? You know, the barrier as far as technology makes it a lot more accessible, but obviously the hardest part about getting anything made is just having the will to go and actually do it. So what are some of the tips or tricks you give to someone like yourself, or even maybe your younger self, in regards to your experience thus far?
So do you see what advice I would give to my younger self?
Or, and you know, someone like yourself, you know, like just anybody
yeah.
that wants to get into the film industry, that is in, you know, maybe younger, or just, you know, in a similar spot where they want to make something.
Oh yeah. Well, my number one, I mean, I'm still trying to find my way as a director, but like my number one advice would always be work with what you have, and just it's about what you can get, not about what you want to get. And it's always good to push yourself and get the best you can. But if you're gonna aim for the impossible, then you're not gonna get anything. So you always gotta like work with what you have. And again, it doesn't mean that you have to hold yourself back. Just think what you have, how many people you have at your disposal, all the favors you did. So that would be my first one. And another one I would really give for the youngsters is learn your technicals. You know, camera editing. A lot of directors, and I fell for this too at the beginning, think that, oh, I'm just gonna direct. I don't really need to be good at camera operating or editing. Just being good at this stuff helps you as a director. It doesn't just help you communicate with your workers, with your workmates, whatever, but it also just makes you a better artist, in my opinion. It makes you tell a story more effectively. Yeah.
Oh, I would agree 100%. The more you know, the better you can understand, you know, what each part of your team is doing, and at the same time, you know, be able to contribute either suggestion or learn from some people that maybe are really great at what they do. And you know, when it was interesting when you mentioned before that this had initially not started as a horror movie. Now, would you consider yourself a fan of horror movies?
Absolutely, yes.
What are some of your go-tos that, you know, maybe even helped inspire you here alongside Dabby, but also anything that you just have always enjoyed?
Absolutely. The Wreck was one movie that I really like, that obviously inspired by that. There's a Bollywood movie called Rat, R-A-A-T. It means night. And there's an actress there, Urmila, and she's so good. And the character Lisa, like the possessed character, was inspired by her. If you watch that movie and if you watch the ending, you'll see what I mean. And yeah, just like a lot of Japanese horror movies, like The Ring. I don't know if it was Japanese or something else. My bad.
Yep.
If it isn't. The Grudge, that was another one, obviously. But yeah, just all the good ones, like all the and some Bollywood ones, Raz and stuff people didn't heard of here. But yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the name, but I'm blanking on it, of another. It's not, I don't know if it's a Bollywood film, but it's almost like someone described it to me kind of like a Bollywood version of Hellraiser. I'll have to think of the name of it, but it was absolutely stunning. So I definitely need to go out and see more outside of the normal comfort zone. And, you know, growing up in Afghanistan, like what was, you know, like the access to horror movies? You know, I'm always curious to know what were you watching there, and was there anything being produced locally that you related with?
The thing is, I've never like lived in Afghanistan. Just a quick overview. Me and my family, we left Afghanistan when I was 1 year old. and then
Okay.
we lived in Pakistan for 6 years, and then we lived in Uzbekistan for another 8 years, and then we came to Canada. So,
Wow.
but yeah, in Pakistan, basically like whatever my uncles would rent from the video store was all I would watch. We had a channel with cartoons, but 50% of the time the channel would freeze, and you would either miss the good stuff or you'd miss the whole episode. So as a child, that was my access to movies. And yeah, once I went to Tashkent, Uzbekistan, it was a bit easier. It was a bit more developed. There's a lot more horror movies on TV, and there's some stores where you could get Bollywood movies. So yeah, that was basically my access into.
Oh yes, and thanks for giving us kind of an overview of the different places that you've lived. You know, it sounds like moving around a lot gives you a lot of access to different, not just entertainment, but also different cultures along the way. Um, Now, what do you when you think about the recent horror efforts? Is there any filmmakers or films that you have seen that have come out recently that you've said, hey, these are things that have really inspired you to maybe do something else, or things that you have just really enjoyed?
Not in horror recently, to be honest. I'm pretty sure there are good ones, but not that I have seen one. I am pretty obsessed with the movie Dune. I know
Yeah.
Dune is done. I know it's not horror, but yeah, that's the movie
It's
I'm.
pretty great though.
It is amazing, yeah. But a horror, I don't know if I've seen a good horror like lately. Yeah.
Yeah, no, they could be few and far between sometimes. And when you think about what you're working on next, is there anything that you're developing that we can look forward to, whether it's something in film, television, or any other medium?
Yes, I would love to make a found footage martial art action movie next.
All right.
Yeah, yeah, it's I got a nice vision in mind. I know it's gonna work, but yeah, I can't say too much too early, but that's my next aim. Yeah.
That's amazing. That premise alone sounds like heaps of fun.
Oh
And
yeah.
I'm gonna see. I think I have just a couple more questions for you here. Uh, I want to go back to in Godforsaken. Things take a pretty dark turn at some point, and um, I was curious. You built a lot of tension as you're leading up to those moments, and then things kind of again really get hyper violent, hyper fast. Now, was it from that point? Did you how did you keep that momentum going? Because sometimes the hardest part when you kind of have this big moment that happens, somewhere towards the middle part of the film, it can sometimes take the wind out of the sails for the latter half of the film. But in this case, things just kind of elevated up. So did you run into any issues around trying to maintain that level of suspense that was going on once you had that big kind of moment where, trying to avoid spoilers, I'm not even sure if it's worth it or not, but just
Oh
basically
yeah.
when when they all basically kill themselves, right? And then they come back. How did you get to that point of saying, all right, this is what's going to happen. They're going to kill themselves. They're going to come back. How do you maintain that suspense at that point?
Um. Hmm. Sorry, like we shot this in November 2019. It's a little.
Oh,
uh,
okay.
I I honestly, I just did my job. I just made sure I communicated with the actors and the crew properly, and as I was writing it, and make sure that everything, worked. Yeah, sorry, that's my answer.
Yeah, it's fine.
I just did my best and just did my try to do my job right. Yeah.
Well, it's the fact that you mentioned this was made in 2019. So what was the journey like to get distribution? Because I'm always think it's interesting for folks to hear, how does one take what they've made, which is such a, difficult thing to do on its own, right? And
Mhm.
then even more difficult, it seems, is now I have to find someone to help bring it out to the rest of the world. So what was that process like for you?
Um, a little time consuming, a little frustrating, especially for a filmmaker my level, obviously. But yeah, it was just a bunch of researching and just seeing who would be compatible with us. It's not like we could like pick and choose, but just to see who would be right for our level. So yeah, it was just a bunch of researching, and we settled on Terror Films because they were perfect for us. The kind of movie they put out. But yeah, I mean, it was difficult, it was frustrating, but at the end of the day, we we just kept going for it, and yeah, just kept doing research, and yeah.
It sounds like persistence pays off in these situations. Heard it
Yeah,
from
exactly.
heard it from quite a few folks. Again, I've had the ability or the opportunity rather to speak with a lot of filmmakers from Canada, and I always find it so fascinating that there is this kind of grit with the way, you know, a lot of folks in Canada are making film today. Is that they're just kind of they're getting it made, and then they're worrying about what we're going to do with it next. And I think that kind of is almost counter to, you know, some of the ways people think about how I get a film made, which is, oh, you know, you just make something great and then everything, you know, everything just falls into place, which is that's only really half of the battle.
Exactly. I mean, but like what I tell people who are not in movies and keep asking me, oh, so when is your movie coming out? What I tell them is like making the movie and finishing it is like one part of it, and then distribution is a whole other part of it. You know, it's not like, oh, I made it, now I just got to distribute it. It's like it's a whole other chapter that you got to take on now. So yeah, it's tough.
Yeah,
I mean, if it was easy, everybody would be in movies. You know.
that's true. That's true. And that's, you know, there's reasons why these barriers exist for better or worse. Um, but getting over them and finding the right people to get your art out there is really what matters. And I know you said you're, you know, you don't have anything in the pipeline for horror, but would you ever want to return and do another horror movie? And if so, what kind of genre would you want to tackle?
Absolutely. I love horror. I would love to tackle like religious horror again. I mean, I tackled it once, but it was with a limited budget. I would like to tackle it like with an actual budget. I mean, that's something that's always going to be like a part of religious horror. But yeah, I mean, my main thing that I really love is action. But yeah, I think I got one more horror in me. There could be more, but as in now, I think I have one more.
Well, you mentioned action, and again, you know, horror is not while we are a horror and horror adjacent site. You know, we all love film from all different genres and spaces. What are some of the action films that um, you've really that have inspired you to want to go and make action films?
All Jackie Chan movies, first of all. The Raid, but yeah, all Jackie Chan movies, The Raid, Jet Li movies. I grew up on the other side of the world, so for me, it's all Jet Li, Jackie Chan, and those guys. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
there's an underappreciation here on the Western side of the world about particularly martial arts films. Um, you know, usually depending if you grew up in a certain time, you might have gotten access more to them than you do. But nowadays, it almost feels like we have very few. So would love to see more, particularly, you know, stunt work and choreography work around that, because that's when that stuff works, it really works, gets the blood pumping.
and it's so much fun to film action. I mean, I've done a bunch of smaller short films. That's how I got into stunts. But yeah, they're just super fun to do. Yeah.
Looks like it. I mean, I'm sure I'd probably have to get used to breaking some bones and getting all bumped up, but it certainly does put it out there as far as the art's concerned. And I would agree that the Raid and even the Raid 2 are just so much fun. But well, Ali, before I let you go, I know you said you're got this idea for this found footage martial arts film, but is there anything that you're expecting to be released that we can anticipate, or that people should check out, or anything you just want to promote from yourself or anybody else?
My favorite martial arts films, but I would like to say one thing. The movie Unholy came out on 2021. We finished this movie in November 2019. You know, I just want to nicely say that it's not a ripoff of Unholy. I did not know that movie existed when we made the movie. That's all. But
Well,
yeah.
I haven't heard that from anybody, but if there is, if people are saying that out there, then then let the record be corrected. Um, and you know, again, I think it really is quite an accomplishment that that what Godforsaken is, because again, as I've said before, found footage is a genre that's hard for me to get into right away, and to not only do found footage really well, but also tackle religious horror in a way that feels, you know, to me, it felt new and exciting and fresh, you know, especially the direction things took once the midway point. So I think, again, a massive congratulations to you. And I hope that more folks get to see this, word gets out there, and no matter how fast it spreads, as long as people get a chance to partake in enjoying this.
Yeah, thank you. I'm so glad you enjoyed it. I mean, it always makes a filmmaker happy when, somebody likes their movie genuinely. So yeah, thank you.
Of course, and we'll be supporting you and trying to follow you along your career along the way, Ali. So please let us know what else you're working on that we can be as it comes to fruition, especially the found footage martial arts film. That sounds amazing. And again, thank you so much for the time. And for all of people watching this, stay safe and watch more horror movies. Thanks so much, Ali.
And no problem. Thank you. Thanks for having me.